Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today we're going to talk about the Spiro Agnew watch from the Dirty Time Company. I first heard about this watch from a couple of friends of mine who had seen one out. I believe they were going to a garage sale, and so they knew I was into watches and they mentioned it to me. And then later for Christmas, another friend of mine saw one at an antique shop and he purchased it. It was unworking, and he gave it to me as something of a bit of a joke gift. We'll get into the specifics of the watch later in the video. The watch itself is a very simple device. However, the story behind it I thought was really fascinating, so I wanted to put a video together to discuss it. When I first heard about this watch, I just assumed it was some sort of like campaign tool, like a button that an elected candidate might run with. But instead, it turned out to be a lot more involved. So let's go ahead and let's dive into that history. First, in order to understand the watch, we need to understand who Spiro Agnew was. He was a politician who had been serving as governor of Maryland until January of 1969 when he became the 39th vice president of the United States under Richard Nixon. Ultimately, Agnew resigned as vice president in 1973. It wasn't related to the Watergate scandal that took down Nixon, but rather kickbacks he had received earlier in his career and which continued when he was vice president. Ultimately, Agnew pleaded no contest to tax evasion, and that's basically the end of his political career. However, the watch that we're going to talk about today actually predates the scandal and predates the resignation, with it being created as a concept around Christmas of 1969. To understand the concept of the watch, you need to understand that there was a joke going around college campuses at the time. There are different ways you can kind of tell it, but essentially in a nutshell it is this. Did you know that Mickey Mouse wears a Spiro Agnew watch? Now, as I noted, I've seen this joke sort of presented in a variety of ways where maybe you ask, what sort of watch does Mickey Mouse wear? And then the respondent would answer, a Spiro Agnew watch. But in today's context, none of them make any sense and they're not funny. From my research, it appears that the joke stems from a combination of Spiro Agnew not being seen as a particularly intelligent person, coupled with, while being vice president, he was known for criticizing those who protested the Vietnam War. So, to a lot of his opponents politically, he was seen as basically a cartoon character. And so, if human beings are going around wearing a cartoon character, Mickey Mouse, on their wrists, if Mickey Mouse were to wear a watch, what would be on his watch? And obviously, the conclusion is Mickey Mouse would have to wear something that's even more of a cartoon character. And that something is Spiro Agnew. So that's sort of the basis of the joke. So, Christmas 1969, a doctor, Hale Doherty, and his wife, Patricia, are home with the family, and one of their sons, back from college, mentions the Spiro Agnew joke that he heard on campus. The couple find it hilarious, and they decide it would actually be a fun joke to go and make a watch with Spiro Agnew on it and sell it. So the Dohertys found an art student in Long Beach who was willing to make the watch design, which was essentially modeled on a very popular Mickey Mouse watch that was going around during that time period. And in addition, they went ahead and decided they would name the brand, the company for the watch, the Dirty Time Company, which was similar to how one of the neighborhood kids mispronounced their last name, Doherty. The couple couldn't find any retailers who were willing to stock the watch for them. So what they did is they contacted a Swiss watch company, had 2,000 units produced. Then they went and took out a full-page ad in the Los Angeles Free Press, and they sold them direct, with the family actually handling final assembly and shipments from their house. At the time, this watch retailed for $14.95. The ad was successful and orders started to come in. But what really changed the game was when the watch started to gain traction in the public eye because certain influential individuals were starting to wear it. So actually, one of the very first people that was sort of a known entity to buy the watch was Pierre Salinger, who had served as John F. Kennedy's press secretary in the White House when John F. Kennedy was president. But the big trigger was when Ethel Kennedy wore the watch, because when Ethel wore it, there was a photograph, it was picked up, and it ran, and the photo was used as a wire service photo. So it ran all across the United States in a variety of newspapers. Because of that, the Spiro Agnew watch sales just surged. The watch got covered in Time magazine. It got covered in Playboy magazine. A lawyer for Richard Nixon ordered 2 of them. He wrote a letter to get them on White House stationery. Elizabeth Taylor, the actress, ordered a dozen of them. John Lennon of The Beatles fame ordered a Spiro Agnew watch and sent Hale Doherty a signed copy of the Let It Be album in exchange. Now, all this begs the question, what did Spiro Agnew think about the watch? And actually, initially, he was supportive of it. Hale Doherty sent Agnew one of the early versions of the watch, and Agnew wrote back stating that the watch was, quote, both attractive and clever, end quote. However, as time went by, Agnew started to notice more and more of his political opponents were wearing the watch. And so he became upset and he threatened legal action on the grounds that his privacy was being violated. So through his attorney, Agnew proposed that he would grant permission to the Dohertys to do the version that they had for the Dirty Time Company, but a portion of the watch's profits would need to be donated to the families of American soldiers who were captured or missing in Vietnam. Hale Doherty, being a Democrat, didn't agree to this, but instead made a donation to the American Cancer Society. And as near as I can tell, that resolved the issue. The Dohertys have claimed they don't know actually in the end how many Spiro Agnew watches they sold. A lot of knockoff versions did appear as the popularity of the watch surged, and the Dohertys sued many of them for copyright infringement. Of the original design, I've seen two versions. Some over at the 3 o'clock position spell out Dirty Time Company, and I've seen other photographs and video where it says DTC instead as an abbreviation. The Dirty Time Company did go on to release some other novelty watches that didn't feature Spiro Agnew until the company was sold as a business in the late 1970s. So, with that background out of the way, let's turn the camera around and let's take a look at my copy of this watch. The watch is 35 millimeters in diameter. Mine is 10.1 millimeters thick without the strap, though I do need to note that the crystal here has been replaced, and so it might not be the original crystal size. It is 40 millimeters lug to lug, and it has a lug width of an inconvenient 19 millimeters. As you can see, the watch dial itself is quite dirty, and it should be white. However, the dial is tricky to clean. Dials are tricky to clean in general. However, when I was working on this watch, I found that this dial is actually just printed on paper. So even water is very risky to use on it. In fact, the dial had been separated from the base plate of the movement, and I had to apply an adhesive and get it reattached. So, setting though aside the discoloration and the age that has impacted the look of the watch, you can see that there is a caricature of Spiro Agnew. He's in a star-spangled outfit, and that occupies the center of the watch. You can see that the arms of his body represent the hour and minute hands, and then there is also a sweeping central seconds hand. The watch has Arabic numerals at the 3, 6, 9, and 12 o'clock positions. The watch has the copyright Dirty Time Company branded over near the 3 o'clock position. Over near the 9 o'clock position, it says Spiro Agnew Original. And then flanking the 6 o'clock Arabic numeral is Swiss and made. This watch does not feature any lume. As you can see, the watch's case is gold in color. And the original watch crystal was acrylic. I actually, while working on this watch, saw that the acrylic crystal was damaged, so I had some mineral glass that I did pop into the case. However, I ended up taking this watch to a watchmaker to get it to work right, and he has swapped it back to acrylic. I'm assuming because the mineral glass I used was probably not quite the right size, and I had wondered if that was interfering with some of my hand performance when I was doing my own tests. This watch uses a closed case back. It just snaps down, and the only markings on it are the indication that it's Dirty Time Company. The watch is actually driven by the EB8800 Swiss movement. Now, that is a pin lever movement. For those not familiar, prior to quartz watches, the pin lever movement was the cheap method to produce a watch. It is far less accurate and is far more prone to wear, given that oftentimes the pin lever watches have extensive metal-on-metal friction, but they were very cheap to produce. This iteration of the EB8800 is a 1-joule version, and this is a hand wind only movement. It beats at a rate of 2.5 hertz, and it has a power reserve of approximately 36 hours. Now, in terms of the strap, I have gone with an aftermarket red, white, and blue strap because I had read that the watch originally did come with a strap that was red, white, and blue. However, the watch that I received had a missized, inappropriate strap included with it, and so I had to order one. Granted, my strap ends up looking like the French flag, but it is what it is. And for those curious, here is what the watch looks like when worn. and my wrist size is 6 3/4 of an inch. I'm not really doing a formal review on this watch as it is a novelty piece. It's not made anymore and it's so vintage. Finding a working one is probably not the easiest thing to do in the world. The watch case, however, has basically zero water resistance. The movement is not great, as I've noted. I had originally planned on, when I received this watch, to fix it up myself and put a video together showing you me restoring the watch. However, I just could never get the balance to stay running, even after using balances from other EV8800 movements I acquired off of eBay. So I finally found a watchmaker, which was no small feat, that was actually willing to work on a pin lever movement. And even when I presented it to him, he indicated that the movement's value itself wasn't really going to be worth the cost, which was $200 to get the watch to work. That wasn't particularly surprising to me, as last I checked, functional versions of this watch go for under $100. However, it was a gift, and the story was interesting, and so here we are. I am curious, after doing everything that I have done to get this watch to work again, if it would be possible for me to find a modern movement. And the big question is finding one that would support the handset. Now, quartz is completely out because these hands have to be way too heavy for a quartz movement to be able to power. But perhaps a modern, accurate mechanical movement exists that could be used to retire the old pin lever power source. And ideally, you'd want it to be Swiss made if you wanted the branding on the dial to still be accurate. The key, of course, is to keep the hands original, because without those arms going around to tell you the hours and the minutes, the entire concept of the watch essentially falls apart. But regardless, it is running now, and even though it is fairly low amplitude and has a fairly high beat error, I will say the watchmaker was able to, at least in the dial-up position, get the watch to be relatively accurate. And when I threw it on my time grapher, it was running with an offage of about 12 seconds a day. Well, folks, that's it for this video. I hope you found this discussion of the Spiro Agnew novelty watch interesting. And if you did, please give the video a like. It does help out with YouTube's algorithm. And if you want to be notified when I release new videos, just click the subscribe button. And other than that, I have nothing else to say. So I just hope you all have a really good day. Take care.